Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In this video, we are going to study the 6 pramanas, the 6 means of knowledge. Last video, we studied the means of valid and invalid knowledge. Pramanas are the means for valid knowledge. And in Indian philosophy, we use these 6 pramanas, as you must have seen the slides there. So, what are these 6 pramanas? The first is Pratyaksh Praman. It means actually perception. So, in Pratyaksh Praman, you are relying upon the data you collect through the senses. Through the 5 senses, whatever we collect, those are our perceptions. And we absolutely believe that they yield true knowledge. But actually, whatever you see, if even science will tell you this, whatever you see, you are seeing it depending upon very many factors. It is heavily mediated knowledge. Did you observe this? If I asked you which place is closer, let's say between Delhi and the moon, actually the moon will appear closer to you wherever you are situated, because you can see the moon, you can't see Delhi. But that doesn't mean the moon is closer to you. So the point is, if you rely only on the information collected by the senses, that may not be enough to give you true knowledge. So many factors are involved in knowledge collected through the senses. You also know that it's only the visible range of light that gives you the experience of life as you see it. And that is only a very small part of the entire electromagnetic radiation, which is actually available to you all the time. So you are programmed to perceive only few things, but yet we take Pratyaksh Praman as a means of valid knowledge. Now, just watch this slide. This slide will give you a lot of information about Pratyaksh Praman. See, perception comes from Pratyakshi, which means anything that is presented to the eye or any other sense organ becomes perception. And such sense perception is a means of knowledge. Now, it has 3 aspects: external, internal, and transcendental. Usually we may not think like this, but these systems, Indian philosophies have studied all this very deeply, and there they have discovered that it is true. External perception is all that we study in science, but there is something called internal perception also. A lot of it can be based on your smriti, memory. And there is something called transcendental perception also. There is supersensory perception. It is called yogaja perception, pratyaksha. It is also called yogi pratyaksha, which means the mind can be brought to a state of such a rarefied state that it will perceive suprasensory knowledge. That is also knowledge. That is also fine-tuning your perception to the highest extent. And that is also called perception. But it is after you have worked on your mind as a result of sadhana. It is honing your perception to a superhuman degree, you can say. So this yogi pratyaksha gives you spiritual knowledge, supersensory knowledge. But otherwise, pratyaksha is the means to get all other forms of knowledge of external objects. So these are the 3 types of perception. And external perception is the principal means of knowing the physical world. It is the direct way of knowing, and it leads to immediate cognition, and it is used extensively in science. So right from the time when you start studying science, you are given this, isn't it? What you observe, observation, and then experiment, observation, and inference. So what do you draw out of that observation? Inference is based on pratyaksha. Anuman is based on pratyaksha. Inferences are based on what you have perceived. The data you collect from that, you infer something out of that. So that is the importance of this Pratyaksha Praman. The 4 factors involved in Pratyaksha Praman are, of course, the object of cognition, which is external, and through your senses, through sound, touch, smell, sight, and taste, you capture the object of cognition. So your sense organs serve as the instruments of knowledge between subject and object. And then the mind connected to the sense organ through the central nervous system. Brain is of course a part of it. And attention is crucial to perception. Please see, all these are the factors involved in perception. Mind can be connected to one or more organs at the same time. Example, you can see and hear the teacher at the same time, isn't it? So mind, which is more pervasive than the sense organ, it can connect to two or more senses at the same time. And finally, consciousness or the self, that which enlivens the mind. Because if you are not a conscious entity, if you don't have reflected awareness in your mind, obviously your thoughts, perceptions will mean nothing to you. Have you seen this? You may be looking, but you are not seeing. What is the meaning of this? Sometimes, when your mind is elsewhere, it is brooding over some movie you have seen. Your eyes are open, you're looking, but you're not seeing. Unless you're mindful, attention is in place, and you're fully conscious of the present moment, you can't perceive. So all this is required for perception. The senses, of course the sense object, the senses, then the mindfulness, attentiveness, and awareness. At the core of the perceptive process is consciousness. So these are all the factors in Pratyaksha Praman. Now a little bit into the actual process of perception, and then we will move on. Please see this slide. See, this is the perception process. You can see it in the image there. Earlier also you have had, I think, this knowledge in the video Epistemology of Cognition. See, in the first step, the person is vaguely aware of the object in a sort of indecisive state. What is its function? So this is actually the manas. What is it? So it's a function of cogitation in your mind. Then you recall, you compare it with some past impression of it. And this function of recollection is the chitta aspect. See how deeply it has been studied. With this recollection, the person cognizes this is a bird. Because he has past knowledge of a bird, he recognizes this is a bird. So this is the function of your buddhi, determination. And with this knowledge, spontaneously arises that I know this object, I know this bird. So this is the function of the ahankar. So the rapid succession of all these four functions in your mind, which appear instantaneous, gives you the immediate perception that this is a bird. But the number of factors that have been involved. See, the object, the sense organ, the vritti in your mind, your attention, and consciousness. All of these are responsible for the actual perception process. So please notice all these factors carefully. How your mind functions. You have knowledge today of how your brain functions to a great extent. But what is happening in your mind? This is the knowledge being provided here, that all of the faculties of your mind, manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankar, are sort of together, collating as it were, and producing this knowledge of the object, any object, and at the same time, it is across so many dimensions of your own being that you are cognizing. You are cognizing through the senses, brain, the mind, the faculty of attention, and consciousness. All of these are involved in the perceptive process. So isn't this interesting? This is how Pratyaksha becomes a Praman through all of this. In the next slide, you can see consciousness at the core. I want you to notice this because this doesn't easily come to us when we study science. What is at the core of your perception process? Please watch this slide and see. Mind undergoes modification according to the object due to which knowledge is possible, and all perceptions are due to the radiance of pure consciousness which illumines the mental modification or vritti. See, this is the special contribution of yoga and Vedanta to the understanding of this Pratyaksha, perceptions. Unless the mind has modified as per the object, it is not possible to perceive the object fully. And for the mind itself to function, for your thoughts to be something for you, means something for you, there must be the illumination of the mental vritti, the mental modification through consciousness. So these two factors, mindfulness, the generation of the vritti, and consciousness illumining the vritti, are what are actually responsible for knowledge regarding the object. So the seat of your perception process is consciousness. The entire understanding in Vedanta lies here. The epistemology of cognition or perception lies in consciousness ultimately. Because unless your mind was enlivened by awareness, anything in front of you would not matter. You would not be a conscious being. If you were not mindful, still you would not perceive. You are able to perceive only because all of these things are taking place, but so spontaneously that you don't recognize them. You immediately feel you saw something. But how you saw? How did the perception or cognition take place? This is very important to understand. That is why we are going deeply into each of these pramans. This is how pratyaksha, sense perception, becomes a means for valid knowledge. It includes all these processes, but finally it is giving you the knowledge of the object. So that is why pratyaksha is the first valid means of knowledge in Indian philosophy. We will go into the next slide, which deals with the second means of knowledge. This is anuman. It is also called inference or knowledge that follows. Follows what? Follows the data you have already collected. See, please keep your eyes on the slide because a lot of information has been put there. Anuman or inference is defined as applying reason to reach a new conclusion about truth from one or more observations and previous understanding of concomitance. You have to understand this term concomitance, or what is called vyapti in Sanskrit. It means when two things go together or occur together, you can infer the reality of one thing from the other. Like, for example, when you see smoke on a hill, you can infer there is fire. The hill is on fire. So you infer the existence of fire. You can't see the fire, but you are seeing smoke. You infer the existence of fire through the smoke. So this is how inferences are made. Based upon sense data, you are seeing the smoke. You are not seeing the fire, but you are inferring fire by seeing the smoke. So truth ascertained not by perception or direct observation, but through medium of a mark that a thing possesses, a certain character. Here, smoke in the example I gave you. So this is anuman, inference. Example, seeing smoke, one infers there is fire on the hill. You know, every medical diagnosis is actually an inference. Can you see the disease? You can't see the disease. You only see the symptoms. But because you see the symptoms, you have data collection through pratyaksha, praman. See how we apply the pramanas. You have collected some amount of data about some effects on your body, the symptoms, and as a result, you compare it with the knowledge you already have and infer that this could be the problem. Every diagnosis is actually an inference. So, please see this, anuman depends upon pratyaksha praman, upon the data you have already collected. So, we reach to this conclusion. Now, you have understood a few things about, I think, anuman, which is vyapti. Two things should occur together for you to be able to infer. And you are collecting one thing from pratyaksha, from perceptions. You are collecting the first collection of facts is from pratyaksha, from perceptions, and you're inferring something out of that. So we reach to a conclusion from given facts. This method for gaining knowledge consists of three parts. So you see, there are very many, you can say, means for inference or types of inference. I will not go into those details for the simple reason, as you will require it for our study. Only that much I'm going to give it to you. You can make a lot of study in various ways of it. You can go on Google and do it. But here, as much as will be required for our study, only that much we will be taking. So the method for gaining knowledge is in 3 parts in inference. You see, the first is called pratigna. It's a hypothesis. The hill has fire is the hypothesis. It's only a hypothesis, okay? It's not fact yet for you. But why? The reason is because it has smoke. So the drishtanta, the example of inference is because there is smoke, there must be fire. So the hill is on fire. Because in your kitchen you have seen that where there is, of course, today this example may not hold because you don't have smoke in your kitchen. But in those days, when they invented all these, when they discovered all these truths about perception, about the means of knowledge, or an ordinary kitchen, in today's village homes also you can see, if there's smoke, obviously it means there's fire, there are cinders. So this is how the inference is drawn. That's why this example has been given traditionally. So you see, you use a hypothesis, provide a reason and a drishtanta example. Whatever has smoke has fire, such as a kitchen, and that is how the inference is considered a reason, a science in itself. It is based on solid reason that you draw a particular conclusion. So this is the importance of Anuman. Science heavily uses inductive inferences, isn't it? Even Vedanta uses inferences. For a lot of knowledge in Vedanta, we are drawing inferences from what we have known through other means, through Pratyaksha Praman and the like. And that is how a huge gamut of knowledge is created. So this is what I wanted to tell you about Anuman or inference. Let's go to the next slide. The third Praman is called Upaman or analogy or comparison. Now, please put your eyes on this slide and look at it closely. Comparison or analogy is a method of mediate knowledge obtained by comparing and exhibiting connection. Knowledge by which A's similarity to B is gained from B's similarity to A, which has been perceived elsewhere. For example, there are many examples which we can give when we say a lion-like man. So it's a metaphor for strength, isn't it? For courage. So not that the man is like a lion, but his behavior, his strength is like that of a lion's. That's the meaning. So from the lion analogy, you are drawing a characteristic of the man. Another example given there is cow A is at home. One goes to the forest and sees another wild cow called B. He perceives the similarity of B with respect to A at home and forms the conclusion, B is like my cow. He gains additional knowledge by comparison. So which animal it is? It's a cow because it's like the one I have at home. Now, how is this applied in Vedanta? Analogy. Oh, you'll find plenty of analogies in Vedanta. Kathopanishad and all that has so many analogies. Through comparison, teaching knowledge. See, I've given an example here. Atman is like Akash, they will tell you. Which means they are talking of the all-pervading, unrelated aspect of space. By reflecting on the characteristics of Akash, space, one can form an idea about the Atman. So when you don't have any idea of consciousness, they will tell you that it is like Akash, meditate on the infinite sky. So then when you meditate on the sky, there are no borders and boundaries there. So you get a sense of all-pervading, infinitely expansive entity, reality. So Atman is something like that. Consciousness is something like that. You get an abhas of it. So there are Vedantic meditations like this. That think of a vast expanse of water. Sri Ramakrishna used to say a vast meadow or field also will give you a sense of the infinite. So these are all analogies, comparison or upaman, which you are drawing. You are using upaman as the praman in order to understand something which you cannot directly perceive through the senses. So you see, it is an important praman which we use across philosophies. In many branches of knowledge, this is the common analogy used. Even in everyday language, we use this. Isn't it? You want to describe a person, you will describe him or her through somebody else whom you know, who is known to everyone. In that manner, you will describe that person. So this is a common method of knowledge used. Now let's go to the next slide. See, this is called Arthapati, postulation. Now there are important points put there on the slide. Please notice them. Postulation is derivation from circumstances. It is method of assumption of an unknown fact to account for a known fact that is otherwise not possible to explain. It arises out of demand for explanation. For example, A is fat. Then you know that he fasts during the day. So then the assumption will be, that means he eats a lot at night. So you see, you are postulating. If he is fat and doesn't eat by day, then obviously he is eating by night. You are postulating that. So to account for the fact of his stoutness. See, Arthapati works like this. Now there are two types of Arthapati: postulation arising from what is seen, perception obviously, and postulation arising from what is heard, which is testimony. Now example for this is, you see, assumption of implied meaning of a sentence on account of incompleteness or unusual nature. For example, we use open door or closed door. It is meant to supplement the term door. You may not use the word door, but open and close means obviously it's referring to the door. So postulation is accounting for one particular fact because of the presence of another fact. It is a postulation. It is in a sense a creation of your mind, but based on very solid evidence, data, facts. So this method also we are using heavily, isn't it? We use it in science. You know, there are so many axioms and postulates. Even in mathematics, you use it. So this is a valid means of knowledge which is used across philosophies. This is Arthapati. After this, we will go to the next slide. Please see this. This is Anupalabdhi. It is a little difficult to understand, but if you pay attention to the slide, you will be able to grasp it. It means non-perception or negation as cognitive proof. The absence of any object or its attribute from a locus is known neither by sense perception nor by any other method of knowledge based on it. Example, inference, postulation, verbal testimony or comparison. Like for example, there is no book on the desk. Can any Praman prove this? No, it can't. Only Anupalabdhi will prove it. There is no rose on the rose plant. Mother has no grey hair. There is no bird on the tree. I do not have a headache. In all these cases, non-existence is known through instances of non-perception or non-apprehension of presence and not by perception of non-existence at their respective places. That is the locus. So we know of presence through perception and we know of absence through non-perception. This is the importance of Anupalabdhi. So knowledge of non-existence is not due to another knowledge. This itself gives direct knowledge of abhav or perceptible objects and their attributes. So you see, inference is due to knowledge of invariable concomitants. I mean, Anupalabdhi. Inference is due to that. Comparison is due to knowledge of similarity. Postulation is due to knowledge of the fact to be explained. Shabda is due to the knowledge of words conveying intention. Anupalabdhi is purely the knowledge of non-perception. The absence of something is known through this Anupalabdhi. For example, in Vedanta, you see, absence of multiplicity is known directly by non-apprehension in transcendental states. You know, in the state of, as I told you, yogi pratyaksha, or the state of samadhi, the state of deep absorption, which you find through Vedantic meditations, what is called nididhyasan, meditative states, there you do not find multiplicity. So that is considered the truth of existence. So you see, you are applying Anupalabdhi there. If multiplicity was the fact of existence, it should have been so in all states of being. But it is not so. In the higher states of perception, supersensory perception, multiplicity is not apprehended, which means the non-apprehension is proof that the reality is unitary consciousness and not the multiplicity. So you see how Anupalabdhi is applied? Non-perception is a great proof for many facts, especially the absence of something. You can only know by this means. So this is also considered as a valid means of knowledge. This may be hard to understand or grasp, but if you dwell enough upon it, you can grasp it readily. Let's go to the next slide. This is the slide Shabda, that which produces verbal testimony, the spoken or written word. Please see what I have put there. Articulate sound, that is word with meaning, and applies to a verbal expression with one or more words, uttered or written. Both constitute Shabda Praman. It is the main Praman used in self-knowledge. You see, for Paravidya, you use this Praman. As a means of knowledge, Shabda Praman refers to verbal or written testimony. Verbal testimony is most potent instrument for transmitting knowledge. It is the principal medium of education, isn't it? Shabda Aparoksh, based on the Mahavakyas, is the main means to transmit Vedanta Anubhav or experience, according to Sureshwaracharya and the Vivarana school of Advaita. Here I want you to understand this, that this Shabda Aparoksh is when a very ripe disciple hears about Vedantic truth, especially the Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, these great dictums, these cryptic statements from the Upanishads, from the mouth of an enlightened guru, it immediately results in that knowledge, the knowledge of Brahman. So this is called Shabda Aparoksh, Aparokshanubhuti through Shabda. And that is why Shabda is used as a very powerful Praman, a means for direct knowledge. Shabda, it is also called Aptavakya, statement of a trustworthy person, and Agama or authentic word, which means trustworthy reports and records. Shabda overcomes the limitations of perception and inference. For perception, the object must be present for the senses. If object is beyond the reach of the senses, knowledge obtained is either by inference or testimony. Inference depends on perception, so it is limited. Words of reliable person or reliable report serve as means of knowledge. Shabda is the most important praman for Vedantic knowledge. In fact, even for Laukika Vidya, even for knowledge of this world, how much of Shabda Praman we use, isn't it? Now you see, suppose you have to know a particular star. You may not even have seen it. It's that far away. But you take Apta Vakya. You know very well that what your teacher is telling you about it is authentic. And you have the means to perceive it. You can have Pratyaksha Praman also through the telescope. So you see, this is how we keep applying these pramans. And Shabda Praman, where perception is not possible because the object is not presentable to the senses, it is maybe that far away, then you may use inference. If inference also is not there, then of course, for inference, you need some amount of Pratyaksha Jnana. But if you can't apply inference also, then you use Shabda straight. You go to verbal testimony, you believe in the written and spoken word, and you try to find out the truth about the thing. If you just believe and proceed, it may appear like belief, but actually Shabda, it's a praman. It produces the knowledge. How it produces the knowledge is, especially when it comes to self-knowledge. If the mind is ripe enough, the power of the guru and the written word, this Vedantic knowledge, will awaken the mind into that state. So this is how Shabda has the capacity to produce knowledge. In fact, as I told you, your entire educational process is Shabda Praman. And even this higher education, the knowledge of Brahman, the knowledge of supreme reality, this is one means of knowledge which is infallible, Shabda Praman. In various ways it is used, and we must learn to accept these pramanas like this. In your everyday life, you are applying a whole lot of them. Please see. This is just a systematization of what you are using in everyday life. You are using it in all branches of knowledge. This is only a bringing it together, all together, and trying to see it, how it applies to which branch of knowledge. In Indian philosophy, This is how the pramanas have been described, the means of knowledge. If you go to Buddhism, they also have such solid means of knowledge. So everywhere these pramanas are very important. That which produces valid knowledge, prama, is praman. And this is how the 6 ways of knowing, or the 6 pramanas, generate valid knowledge. Further, we will be going into application of these pramanas in the next video. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.